Tuesday, May 30, Babylon, the centre of sun worship. Sun worship was prominent in Egypt, Assyria, Persia, and certainly Babylon. In his book, The Worship of Nature, James G. Fraser makes this observation on page 529 of Volume 1. In ancient Babylonia, the sun was worshipped from immemorial antiquity. End of quote. It may seem surprising, but at times Babylonian sun worship influenced the worship of God's people in the Old Testament. Read Ezekiel 8:16 and 2 Corinthians 23:5 and 11. What did the prophets write about the influence of sun worship in Israel and Judah? Also look at Romans 1:25. First of all, Ezekiel 8:16, "So he brought me into the inner court of the Lord's house, and there, at the door of the temple of the Lord, between the porch and the altar, were about 25 men with their backs toward the temple of the Lord, and their faces toward the east, and they were worshipping the sun toward the east." And 2 Kings 23, verse 5, "Then he removed the idolatrous priests whom the king of Judah had ordained to burn incense on the high places in the cities of Judah and in the places all around Jerusalem, and those who burned incense to Baal, to the sun, to the moon, to the constellations, and to all the host of heaven." And verse 11, "Then he removed the horses that the kings of Judah had dedicated to the sun at the entrance to the house of the Lord by the chamber of Nathan-Melech, the officer who was in the court, and he burned the chariots of the sun with fire." And then we'll look at Romans chapter 1:25. "Who exchanged the truth of God for the lie, and worshipped and served the creature rather than the Creator, who is blessed forever. Amen." The prophet Ezekiel, a contemporary of Daniel, pictured some of God's people with their backs toward the temple of God, worshipping the sun toward the east. Rather than worshipping the Creator of the sun, they worshipped the sun instead. In Revelation 17, John describes a time when the principles of Babylon, including sun worship, would enter the Christian church during an age of compromise. The casual conversion of Constantine in the early part of the 4th century caused great joy in the Roman Empire. Constantine had a strong affinity for sun worship. Edward Gibbon, the renowned historian, writes in The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, page 12, "The sun was universally celebrated as the invincible guide and protector of Constantine." End of quote. In AD 321, Constantine also passed the first Sunday law. This edict stated, "On the venerable day of the sun, let the magistrates and the people residing in the cities rest, and let all workshops be closed." That was the Edict of Constantine in AD 321. This was not a law enforcing Sunday observance for all of Constantine's subjects, but it did strengthen the observance of Sunday in the minds of the Roman population. It was in succeeding decades that emperors and popes continued through state decrees and church councils to establish Sunday as the singular day of worship, which it remains today as well for the majority of Christians. What a powerful example of the hard truth that just because the majority of people believe in something or practice it doesn't make it right. And so to finish today, look around at how prevalent Sunday worship is in Christian churches. What should this fact teach us about how pervasive Satan's deceptions are? Again, as with the state of the dead, what is our only safeguard? This lesson was read by Dr. Percy Harrold for Christian Services for the Blind. Sponsored by the Sabbath School Department and distributed through Hope Channel Australia, this podcast is also redistributed by Hope Channel Germany, Christian Record Services for the Blind. It is also available on SoundCloud and through multiple podcast distributors, including Apple iTunes. And you can listen and watch at the same time on YouTube. Remember, God is always faithful.